Trading day of the new year and the new decade. Welcome back to Cavuto Coast to Coast. I'm Blake Berman in for Neil Cavuto. The market's once again racing on this day, but it's a different kind of money where we begin as the fundraising frenzy reaches a fever pitch as we are just 4 weeks out from the Iowa caucuses. Andrew Yang and Pete Buttigieg seeing a major surge in campaign cash, pulling in a combined, when you add them up, $41 million last quarter alone. Bernie Sanders, the big winner, though, from all that at least has been reported, with $34.5 million. But Sanders' massive money haul still more than $10 million behind President Trump. The Trump campaign announcing today it has pulled in $46 million the past quarter. Here was the communications director, Tim Murtaugh, telling me last hour that they are just getting started.
This is a campaign that will want for nothing. We will have the resources to do everything that we could possibly want to protect the states that the president won in 2016 and to expand into new states where the president was close. The economy is definitely going to be a centerpiece of the president's campaign. It just shows no signs whatsoever of slowing down.
To the Federalist senior editor Chris Bedford, District Media Group President Beverly Hallberg, and Potomac Wealth Advisors President Mark Avallone. Hello, all. Good to have you in.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Y'all have a good one?
It was great.
Yeah. Welcome back. Chris, let's start with you. What stood out there when you see all those numbers, Bernie Sanders, Yang, Buttigieg, the president so far reporting? You take away what?
The outlier that I didn't expect was Yang.
Yeah, really, 16 million. I mean, that's not like a small chunk.
He raised 10 million in Q3, so this is increasing enthusiasm for Yang. He's not simply going away. He's making the money, and it seems like people are donating to him and are interested in him. Buttigieg was less surprising because he's a big. He's got a lot of fans on Wall Street and the financial liberal circles. But Bernie Sanders, this is someone who reporters just started to somehow notice recently in January.
Well, his poll numbers have picked up.
They've picked up, but he's been in the top 2 or 3 the entire time. In 2016, he was written off by a lot of reporters, and it turned out that he was huge and formidable. And he's been filling crowds in these states. He's got 5 million individual donors.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Ahead of Super Tuesday from last time around, they say. Beverly, your takeaway?
Well, I think the most important thing when it comes to Bernie Sanders is here is somebody who is 78 years old, who had a heart attack on October 1st and seems to be, so far, the top fundraiser for the Democratic primary, which is pretty impressive. The numbers he's pointing to, though, is that the average donation was $18 and that he had 30,000 new donors on the last day of 2019. So when you think about how many people are donating, you see that there is some people are still feeling the burn. And I also think when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, she's the one who is going to struggle from this the most.
You know, Mark, if I had told you last year that there would be 2 people named Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang, and they would raise $40 million in a quarter, you would have said, get out of here.
Well, I think the markets are digesting these 2 new names, and I think what we're going to see is a lot of enthusiasm from the Democrats. Cumulatively, this is a lot of money. Trump beat them all on an individual basis, but cumulatively, there's energy here. The markets, however, are going to stay on hold for a while from the Democrat primary side because there's no clarity. They don't know who's going to pull ahead, and it's not going to be until after Super Tuesday or even until the convention that the stock market's going to weigh in on these candidates.
I think it's also, when you speak of the market, another reading of just how well the economy is doing. When you look at all of this money, you look at the last few cycles, 2008 led into a recession, 2012, 2016, we're into an economic uptick, into now. I mean, you're looking, Joe Biden hasn't reported yet. Elizabeth Warren hasn't reported yet. The Democrats are probably, when you add those in, going to be right at around 100 million. The president was at 46. Tim Murtaugh just sat in that chair and said the RNC is going to report 9 figures. I mean, you add it all up. The DNC. I mean, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, Chris.
The RNC has beaten every single fundraising record this year except for January, and that's because of Trump's inauguration previously. There's a ton of money flowing into this. It's going to be a massive race, and right now, the Republicans are definitely ahead, but it's going to be on every single level in fundraising.
Ahead in what sense?
Just in development and fundraising and donors and new donors, especially after this impeachment craze. But what we're going to have to see is what happens when the Democrats come behind one candidate.
Right, and that's the question. When you got all this money and candidate A, B, C, and D drops out, and E, F, you got one left. What percentage of that then flows to the person who might have been donating to someone but the nominee was their fourth choice.
I think they're going to keep all that money and maybe more. I think there's a lot of anti-Trump sentiment on the Democrat side, and I think we're seeing a taste of it when you look at these cumulative numbers so early in the process.
Meantime, stocks roaring into 2020 at records. You see what the Dow's doing today. Last check, I think it was up like 180, 190. Yet many still feel left out of the market's massive momentum. There, the numbers of Dow up 180 right now, about 2/3% today. What about that, Beverly? That if you're in the market and you bought a house a handful of years ago or a decade ago, you're doing great. But if you don't have both, or maybe one or the other, you might not be feeling as hot as your next door neighbor.
Yeah, I'm sure over the holidays, a lot of people looked at their 401k and how it did this year. If they had a 401k,
right.
did very
great.
well.
It's if you have it.
But one thing you do hear from Democratic candidates, they focus on two main sectors where the average American has struggled, and that is going to come down to healthcare costs, and that also is higher education. These are two sectors that people are struggling in. Average person is struggling, and everybody has some type of hold in that, especially when it comes to healthcare. The problem with the Democratic candidates, they keep saying that government is the answer, but government is what got us there to begin with.
And you've got more companies coming out over the last few days saying they're going to be raising the price of prescription drugs. We're going to get into that later on in the show. I asked Tim Murtaugh, the economy, do you need it to be at this level come October, November for the president to win? And the campaign thinks that it's just going to keep on going. Do you believe that?
I think a recession in 2020 is highly unlikely at this point. Remember, they report looking back a quarter as well. So for there to be a reported recession and for people to feel pain from an economic slowdown, that's going to have to occur before November. And this economy is roaring and not looking to slow down anytime at all this calendar year.
Yeah, we've heard it's the economy, stupid.
Right.
And there's all these predictions that the economy is just going to keep roaring. What if it just stays at this? Like if it were to just stay at this level and flatline, up and down, but generally stay within, let's call it plus or minus 3%. The president's going to be able to go out there and say, look at the numbers over the last 4 years. Try to beat that, whoever the Democratic candidate is.
Steady is beautiful for this economy and good for the president's reelection hopes. GDP north of 2%, unemployment in the mid-3s, corporate earnings up allegedly, or at least expected this calendar year. That's a recipe for a steady market. The levels are high enough for people to feel wealthy, to be optimistic, and it's how people feel about the economy that drives a lot of their decisions.
Chris, what about what Beverly was hitting at, which was you might be looking at your healthcare costs and you might say they're going up. And Republicans, I remember they said that they were going to get rid of Obamacare. Public polls show that 75% of this country, give or take, likes their healthcare situation if they have it. And some folks might be sitting at home and saying, I don't want any sort of change. And you saw what happened in 2018 with the House.
There's not a lot of popularity for Republicans in the country. A lot of the enthusiasm is for Trump, President Trump. That's the person they want to back. A lot of you'll see this with congressmen and senators who maybe were very wary of him when he first came around, who are saying, all right, now they're trying to attach themselves as closely as they can to the president because he's the driving force. They do remember that the Republicans didn't help with Obamacare. They weren't able to repeal it. The individual mandate, yes, but huge aspects of it, no. And there's some anger at that. I don't think that the leader of this Republican surge here was going to be Mitch McConnell or even Kevin McCarthy. It's going to be the president. The one good sign for all of them, and everyone basically in Washington, especially the party in power, is wages increasing in the United States for the first time after decades.
Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta says 4.5% for the bottom 25%. So the Labor Department reports 3.7%, I think it is, year over year. So wages are increasing if you look at when the president got in office and even to what could be reported for year's end. The administration points out it could amount to $5,000 or so. And then they also talk about the tax cuts real quick.
And here's the narrative we're hearing for Democrats. They realize that a recession isn't going to happen. So what they're saying is average American didn't feel all the benefits. But going back to campaign spending, looking at the numbers of how much people spent in December, average Americans are feeling the benefits of this economy.
Chris, Beverly, Mark, stay there for a second. We'll have you for the rest of the hour. Still to come on Cavuto Coast to Coast. New year, same old